Welcome, everyone. Please
Welcome.
do say hello in the chat and where you're joining us from.
Hello.
Just going to mute as you're coming in, but please say hello in the chat and where you're joining us from so we can begin to connect to this global community here. Brady, nice to see you from Canada. Cecilia from Berlin, welcome. Welcome, welcome. Dubai, Montenegro, Norway, California, Nigeria. Welcome, Barry. Welcome, welcome. And if you're just joining us, please do say hello in the chat and where you're joining us from. Welcome, Kingston, Ontario, Rochester, New York. Is that close to each other? Close-ish. New Hampshire, USA, Malmö, Sweden. Welcome, welcome. South Africa. Hi, Vanessa. Maria Christina. Hi, from Berlin. Welcome, welcome. Us too, we are from Berlin. Great. Welcome, welcome. Sweden, South Africa, California, New Jersey, Luxembourg, Maryland, Canada, Georgia, Amsterdam. Welcome, welcome. Just give a few more seconds here for people to transition. Gerard from Munich. We have so many people from South Africa. How wonderful. Welcome. London, Connecticut, Seattle, Spain, Oliva. Hi, Marie. Beautiful. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. All right, Lorenz, maybe you can continue to let people in. All right. Welcome, everyone. So wonderful to have you all here in this space with us. And it's really wonderful to connect to all the places in the world that you're joining us from. Can you hear me okay? Yes? Okay, good. Yes, a warm welcome to all of you joining us today for this, I think what's going to be a really great conversation on navigating complexity with Jennifer Garvey Berger. So relevant for our times. And we're very happy to see all of you who could join us. For those of you who don't know us, my name is Natasha, and I'm here with my partner Lorenz. We're the co-founders of Sutra, which is a relational learning platform designed around groups. And the heart of our work is about helping organizations, coaches, consultants, and creators offer courses and build communities that invite meaningful connection and conversation online. And our work has supported organizations like the Harvard Program in Refugee Trauma, the World Health Organization, the Presencing Institute, the Pocket Project, Inner Development Goals, and hundreds of other programs and creators. In addition to our platform, we host training programs and conversations like this today. And we call this like a participatory podcast series, exploring the power and possibility of relational work in the world. And our intention is to unpack the philosophy and practice of bringing people together in heart-centered ways that invite humanity, shared understanding, co-creation, and even societal transformation. We are recording this conversation and we'll share it with all of you after. We'll also have room for questions and some breakouts to connect with each other towards the second part of the call today. So please don't leave during the breakouts because that's the richest part to connect and share insights with each other. So welcome to all of you once again. Thank you for joining us. And Lorenz, I'm going to pass it over to you to start our time together.
Awesome. Thank you, Natasha. Welcome, everybody. Really great to have so many amazing people from all over the world. So I'm going to briefly introduce Jennifer, and then we'll do a few moments of stillness just to arrive in the space together, and then we'll get started with the conversation. So yeah, really excited to be having this conversation with Jennifer. I'm going to share a brief bio. She is the author of several acclaimed books on leadership, including Changing on the Job, Unleash Your Complexity Genius, Unlocking Leadership Mind Traps, and she's the co-founder and CEO of Cultivating Leadership, a consultancy that serves executives and teams in the private, nonprofit, and government sectors around the world. Her clients include big fancy names like Google, Microsoft, Novartis, Wikipedia, and Oxfam International. She is a senior scientific advisor to the Inner Development Goals, which is an international personal growth initiative based in Sweden, which is also where I had the pleasure of first meeting her a couple of years ago at their Inner Development Goals Summit. All right. With that, before we jump into the conversation, we do like to take a few moments of stillness just to really land in the conversational space together. So, if it's comfortable for you to do so, I invite you to take a deep breath. Notice the space around you. Notice any sounds in your space. Bring your awareness a little closer to notice the sound of your breathing. And follow that process for a few moments, noticing the air as it passes through your nostrils, your throat, expanding your rib cage and belly. Bring your awareness to your chest region. See if you can notice the subtle beating of your heart. And bringing your awareness a little lower to where your body meets your chair. Notice that point of contact. Notice the weight of your body. Notice where your feet touch the floor. Take a moment to connect with the experience of your body and take a deep breath into that experience. And I invite you to check in with yourself internally. Notice any thoughts, feelings, or emotions that might be present for you in this moment. Welcoming whatever might be there. And welcoming yourself into this space. Although the first part of our conversation will just be me and Jennifer talking, you're very much a participant here, and there will be time for everyone here to share if they would like to in the second hour. So I invite you to take one more deep breath. And when you're ready, open your eyes. If it's comfortable for you to do so, maybe just turn on your camera for a moment, just so we can get a visual on all the faces here. And I invite you to take a look at the people in our space here, just to get a sense of everyone who's here, as if we were in a real physical room together. And yeah, do a quick visual check-in on the audience. Thank you for joining us. All right, so Natasha, maybe you can spotlight Jennifer and then me. Hey, Jennifer, welcome.
It's great to be here. Thanks for
Good.
that centering. I really needed it.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes I just do it for myself.
I loved it.
Hmm. So we're here to talk about complexity fitness. You want to maybe say a few words about what that means?
One of my favorite topics, of course. But yeah, we think about all other forms, so many other forms of fitness. But I've been really thinking about how do we get ourselves fit for what the world is throwing at us these days. And my friends, Carolyn Coughlin and Patrice Laslett, came up with this fitness metaphor, which not such a gym bunny myself. And so perhaps I wouldn't have come up, I'd have come up with like a food metaphor. But they came up with this fitness metaphor, which I think is really helpful to think about how ready are we for what the world is throwing at us in terms of just the radical complexity of the world right now.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that it's something that you can train for because it's also easy to get stuck in this trap that I'm either good at something or I'm not.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just overwhelming for me. I can't handle it. And I think there's just so much going on right now that um, it's almost like an active responsibility. Like you have to somehow find a way to hold space for it because otherwise it almost propagates the same underlying condition and disruption. Um, so I know one thing that you get into in the work that you've done or is this like doing reps by navigating the subject object relationship. And I feel like that's some of the most complex conceptual territory for some people to really land with. Can you share a little bit about what that means?
Yeah. Yeah. So this distinction, these words subject to object aren't very friendly, but they're old, right? They've been in philosophy and psychology for years. And every time I try to change them, they bounce right back into their kind of original language. But basically, the idea is there are things that we can kind of see and hold and deal with, handle. These are the objects that we can um, make decisions about. And we see objects in our life all the time, but what we don't necessarily see are kind of thought objects, right? Like what are the decisions that I can hold out and look at and make choices about? And what are the decisions that I'm subject to that live inside me that I don't even notice that I'm making? Decisions about my identity, my relationships, my assumptions about the world. And the more of those we have inside us that we can't look at, the kind of more the world comes at us and we don't have any tools to handle that. Whereas the more we have them as a whole variety of things, I can think about this assumption and question it. I can think about this piece of my identity and look at it. I can think about this way of making decisions and change it if I want to. The more we have kind of out there and available for us to look at, the more fitness we have. And the rep is bringing something from inside us to a place where we can see it.
What's the in your experience, because I imagine you work with a lot of people around this territory, is there like an easy entry point that you find for a lot of people? Like the most common maybe beginning for getting this on a personal level?
Yeah, I think any of us can think of a moment when we had what we call an insight, right? Where we were walking through the world as us, and suddenly we saw some piece of ourselves was exposed to us. We had like this moment, this aha moment. And pretty much everybody can name some kind of moment where they were like, oh, I never knew that my father's voice was in my head under these circumstances, or I
Mm,
never knew that I was trapped by a version of me who said I have to be successful in this way by the time I'm that age. Like as soon as I see it, I'm like, oh, do I really have to do that? Like, agree with what my 18-year-old self decided I would be when I grew up? Or could I just put that down? So, insight, sight in, is this sort of move from subject to object. It's a way of being able to take something that was in out and look at it. So,
Mm.
anybody who's ever had anything like an insight, you're doing it. You're doing it.
So this pretty much, I mean, for me, this really revolves around a big part around identity, like who we perceive ourselves to be and the context that that creates for how everything else occurs to us, right?
Oh, for sure. Identity is a central question in here. But there are also beliefs about the world,
Mm.
right? Which might be bound up in identity in some ways, but beliefs about what's fair or not fair, what's changeable and not changeable, right? What's mine to do and not mine to do, what's my responsibility. Like all these things are constructs, really.
Mm.
And because we don't watch ourselves constructing, we tend to believe there's nothing we can do about it. But actually, there's quite a lot we can do about it.
All those things, would you think of them as like contexts within which a person operates, like the beliefs, the like fairness? These are all. I'm just wondering if you create a distinction there, is that are those basically like layers of context that person operates within around how they experience and then interpret and make meaning of the world that they're seeing?
I think you could call them contexts. I get less and less clear about the difference between what's my internal condition and what's my external condition.
Mm.
And so the internal condition is so central in creating what the external condition is, and vice versa. Um, but yeah, I think context is a useful word.
I'm really interested in what you just said. Can you just expand on that a little more? The relationship between your internal condition and the external condition.
Well, I think this is one of the kind of core ideas I work with, which is we believe that our experience of the world is of the world.
Hmm.
I believe that my
So we're
experience of
like
you,
observers of something out
that's
there.
exactly right.
Hmm.
I'm observing you. You are a being. You are separate from me. You have features. And what we don't know is we're not actually observing the world straight, right? There's too much in the world for our brains to handle. And so our brain is constantly parsing information, constantly reducing what we see, and then making up stories that are coherent about what's going on,
Mm.
so that we can kind of understand what's going on. And so while I think there are trees outside my window, they exist, you exist, these gorgeous people probably exist, although AI, you know, is Gordon like a real person? I hope. Um, uh, and the stories that I have in my mind are such a big piece of what's going on between us.
Mm. Mm. And to what extent does that story shape
Yeah.
your like to what extent does the observer actually shape the thing that they're observing?
Yeah. I had a client once, I spend my time as an executive coach, among other things. And I had a client once who was describing to me some frustration she was having with her board. She was the director of a large nonprofit. And there was one other woman on her board who seemed to always be like getting in her way, just
Mm.
super frustrated. And she began to experience her board meetings as almost like mind to mind combat with this
Hmm.
other woman. And she had a whole series of stories about how this woman was trying to make a name for herself, and by kind of dismantling this CEO's executive director space. And as I just started to note them. I started to note like all the assumptions and stories she had about this person and held them out, right? They were subject. They became an object as we began to talk about them.
Hmm.
And as she began to just imagine the possibility that she had this wrong, my client, that she had this other person wrong. And she sort of began to play around with, okay, so what could be going on there, blah, blah, blah. So she gets kind of curious, and she goes to the next meeting with this kind of curiosity, like, I don't have you figured out. I'm going to try and figure you out. Like, there's something in here I don't understand. I'm going to try and figure it out. She's a totally different meeting with this person. And she comes back to me and she's like, oh my God, she changed so much.
She changed so much.
So much. She was like, she was a completely different
Hmm.
person. I was like, huh. Like maybe she went and had like shock therapy or something. Like, I don't know what made this other woman a completely different person, but probably it's that my client treated her so differently because she was making sense of her so differently. And then the feedback comes back in and they have a completely different relationship.
Hmm. I mean, I had on a personal level, I had a very similar experience. I mean, not that long ago, where I had a lot of stories about my mom being the way that she is, and then I just kind of had a moment where I really discovered for myself that um, almost all of that existed within me, existed within the what I was shaping her to be, and that and actually when I shifted my listening to her to really hear her and receive what she wanted to say and be receptive to that, she completely transformed as a human being, as a person in my life, and that of course like changed our relationship. So, um, yeah, it's amazing how that works, though. How so much of what we assume about the world out there it actually is shaped by the world in here, right? The way that we like the listening that we have for that world or that person.
I mean, I think this is one of the fundamental glories of being human is that level of you can hear them like stacking insights that you had about your mom, and then the way that just opens up a door to a room you didn't know existed and a
Mm,
relationship you couldn't have imagined before, even if you longed for it because you were available to something else.
mm, yeah. Something I think about a lot, and I'd love to get your reflections on this because I think I think it's really woven in with the developmental journey that you talk about in the course, which for people in the audience later in this call, we're going to be launching a free course that Jennifer that we put together with Jennifer called Complexity Fitness. But yeah, something I've been thinking a lot about is that, so often when we're in relationship with another person, we're in relationship with like the content of that person and not so much in relationship with the context of how they make meaning, which to me is like it's so fascinating. It's so hard to be in relationship with that. It's so easy. It's easy to be in relationship with your own content. It's harder to notice your own context of meaning making. And then it's just like over there with that person, there's like a whole nother universe of content of meaning making around the content they encounter. And it's so easy to assume that, everyone's making meaning of stuff that happens around me the same way I am. But to really look and not just be in relationship with like them as a content, as in like their expression and or the way you perceive their experience, but to somehow try to grok their meaning making, their context of whatever they're operating in. Um, I'd love to hear your thoughts about that.
I mean, for me, this was an idea I came across when I was in graduate school 20, almost 30 years ago. Grok that, right? Like that's shocking. When I was in graduate school almost 30 years ago, I came upon this idea and it irrevocably changed my life and it irrevocably changed my relationships. And that idea has changed every relationship I've ever had. And this notion that right now I'm seeing the world through a kind of a filter, and you're seeing the world through a totally different filter. And so the world that we're looking at and the relationship that we're creating together is so fundamentally shifted by how we're seeing. And it's like this invisible act that everybody's doing, but nobody really notices doing.
Mm,
We're all subject to it.
mm,
And as soon as you begin to see it in yourself, I mean, new possibilities open up for you, because now the world isn't just this thing that you're kind of blown about by. It's a construction in which you are participating, and you could participate differently. And relationships are not like either great or not great, or, oh, he was nice and now he isn't, like, and it's so mysterious. It's like, oh, you're constructing too. We're all constructing. And if we can see some of the forms of that construction, uh, we can change them, we can understand them, we can have more compassion for each other. That the shock to me, I wrote my first book about this set of ideas, as you know, changing on the job. And the thing that surprised me more than anything else about changing on the job, I mean, in addition to the fact that more than just my parents read it, which was like my first surprise, was I got letters from readers who said things like, I had not spoken to my sister in 15 years. And then I read your book and I realized that I had not been thinking about her perspective at all.
Mm,
And I called her and I had a conversation with her, and you've given me my sister back.
wow.
I mean, I heard that story again and again. You've given me my mother back. You've given me my best friend back. Just this idea that we could meet each other in a different way, and we could understand the form of our meeting in a different way, is just life-changing.
I mean, to me, this is like the breakdown we're seeing in our world today, right? All this polarization. It's like, oh, you're right wing, I'm left wing, or whatever. Like, oh, like you're evil, like, and I see it all the time, in this bizarre way too, where you'll have, one set of people saying how like virtuous and inclusive they are, except for those people over there,
Right?
right? Um, and I really I keep coming back to like what's missing is really getting that the people over there are perfectly rational in the sense of the way that they're making meaning of what's important to them, and how they're impacted or affected by what's going on in the world. And it's like that. How do you bridge that? How do you because it's like these people are everything in their context is making perfect sense to them, and yet there's this total like contextual divide between people.
Well, because what we see are behaviors, but what we react to are the stories we have about behaviors.
Hmm.
And those stories are all constructed. They're completely and utterly constructed. Yeah, there are bits of fact in them, but the bits of fact is not what we're reacting to. It's our construction of the story around those facts. That's what we react to. And if we were to understand, oh, there's like a whole moral universe over there that I don't have access to. Oh, and there's another one over there. And oh, there are all these moral universes, and they're moral, right? And
Mm,
they're
mm,
whole. I got into this work as I was a doctoral student. Um, and we did this big study, and we would go like with our clipboards and interview people who were in adult basic education courses. So these were people who hadn't finished their secondary school, and they were going back to school for some kind of secondary equivalency, right? They had left school at some of them at 9 or 10, and like rolled into the world in some way. And I'm a doctoral student. I don't spend a lot of time as a doctoral student with people who don't have very much education. That's like I hang out with my doctoral student friends, right? Like we have a lot of education. And as I would have found their stories really fascinating, some of them horrifying, some of them terrifying, the kind of difficulties that they had encountered in their lives would have been moving no matter what. But because I was there to understand not their story, but the way they made sense of the world,
mm.
the meaning they were constructing from, the story is one component of that, of course. Um, I could not believe how much I fell in love with each of these humans. like when you are actually
Mm.
invested in understanding how somebody else makes sense of the world, their political perspectives, their particular beliefs, like the particulars become so much less important than the meaning as they're constructing it.
Mm.
Uh, and I thought, if people could just see this, if we could just get curious about this with ourselves and each other, it would change the world.
How
I
do you
obviously have not converted enough people to this, and so we have the world that we have today. But here, all of you folks, hopefully, we're gonna do something together.
we're working on it one person at a time.
We're working on it.
How do you do that? I mean, there's a word that keeps coming up for me from what you shared, right? Invisible. It's like all that other stuff is visible. You can see a conversation. You can see someone say something. You can see them do something. You just can't see the way that they're making meaning. You just it's so invisible. And you don't and worse yet, not only do you not see the way they're making meaning, you're not seeing the way you're making meaning.
That's right.
It's
That's right.
like so I'm curious though, because in that process, what you just said, you were researching not necessarily their stories, but their meaning making. What like how do you approach that to like what does that even mean? How do you approach that to kind of do some sort of research around how somebody is how they're constructing meaning out of their reality?
So you need, I think this is where theories are incredibly useful, right? Because they start to give us something to like grab for, right? In a room of like invisible particles, they start to give us something to sense into. And the the theory that has most centrally informed my thinking about this is Robert Kegan's theory. He was my dissertation advisor. He's a long time friend and mentor these last 30 years. And his theory looks at how do we construct the world right now? And then how does that construction change and grow over time? So it's not like, oh, I can tell you how you construct the world and, like that's the end of that. No, it's
Mm,
it's always shifting. It's always shifting. And that gives us some things to look for, particularly in the subject object distinction. What is it that you seem to see and can talk about and seem to be able to make decisions about and can kind of hold in your hand? And what is it that you seem not to see? Like, so my constant question is, what's visible to you of you, and
mm,
what's invisible to you of you? And you have to listen really hard. You have to like lean really far in to ask these questions. But as you listen, you're able to begin to feel the contours of somebody's meaning in that moment.
wow. Um, there's something else that I found really interesting in the course that you just put together here, which is about in the context of the self-transforming mind, this contextual permeability around how you can occupy your context and be flexible in your context and potentially occupy someone else's context and have a lot of fluidity there. Can you talk a little more about that?
Yeah, boy, you're not going for easy shots early.
We have this time together. We got to make the most of it. Let's go deep.
Um, so uh, so a little bit of background is there are these kind of patterns in our meaning making over time. So it's not
Mm,
just like, oh, I'm constantly having to seek something out. A series of theories about adult development, of which Bob Keegan's is one, offer us a way to kind of make sense of these patterns, almost the way constellations help us kind of get our bearings when we look at the sky, right?
mm,
Otherwise, it's just random stars, right? And these constellations help us kind of grab onto, oh, these sorts of things fit together, and those sorts of things tend to fit together. And over here, these sorts of things fit together. And so you can orient yourself to these different worlds of how we might make meaning of the world. And these worlds complexify over time. So in our first meaning making worlds, where we're little kids, we're just trying to tell the difference between me and not me. Like that's pretty much the core question of a baby, right? Like, are you me? Are we all the same? Am I a little bit, do I have skin that's different? If you leave the room, am I gonna die? Like these are the questions a tiny child is occupying herself with. And then those questions complexify over time. If you disapprove of me, am I going to die? Right? If I don't meet my own self-image, is that going to kill me? Right? Like all these questions of how am I going to be okay is one of the questions our meaning system is constantly asking us. And as we grow, we become more facile. We have more capacity to take other people's perspectives. This is one of the lines that you can follow as you're engaging in conversations with somebody and you're trying to like figure out how are they making sense of the world. It's also one of the lines you can follow as you're engaging in conversation with yourself and you're trying to figure out how can I make sense of other people? How many perspectives can I take in the world? Am I in a like we're the good guys and they're the bad guys kind of a space? And what does that mean? And how could that change? And we can ask ourselves all these questions. So in the farther reaches of of our capacity to construct the world, which is we right now call the self-transforming mind. There are theories that take it farther and talk about a unitive mind. But boy, I don't understand it. And I haven't ever interviewed anybody in that place. So we're not going to talk about it. But the self-transforming mind is a mind that can inhabit other people's perspectives so profoundly that they understand that, in fact, other people's perspectives and our differences from each other are part of what constructs us. Part of how I know who I am is by me making sense of who you are and what we have in common and how we push against each other. And the little system that is you and me in this moment, having this conversation, we are sort of orbiting each other and changing each other's orbit at the same time.
I really appreciate how you like broke that down and explained something so complex in a way that's really understandable and relatable.
Yeah, I would like to see, like, I'm not sure that the 100 people that we are all found that understandable and relatable, but we can check in with them as we go.
We'll definitely do that. There was something that stood out for me though, which was that, so many of the early childhood examples you shared with me were about survival. And it seems like one of the barriers to taking on someone else's perspective is that it can feel downright threatening to do that, to have that kind of fluidity with your own orientation. Feels like a very confronting to your identity. Like how, like, and like, how do you navigate this, like, how a person can find safety?
Oh, what a great question. My friend Doug Silsby used to say, your nervous system doesn't know the difference between a threat to your life and a threat to your identity.
Wow.
And this is what we're talking about.
This is like the whole world right now with all the polarization. I mean, it's just like, this is my identity. I have to protect it.
Well, and you can see, this probably gets maybe too meta and controversial simultaneously, but you can see the way my sense of my threat to my identity actually creates safety threats, right?
Mm,
Like now we're at war with each other. Now we might hurt each other, right?
mm, mm,
Now we might polarize in such a way that we actually cause physical harm to each other. So we're not entirely wrong
mm,
when we say identity threats are dangerous. And at the same time, we are entirely wrong when we say identity threats are dangerous, right? It's both true and not true
mm,
simultaneously. Um, so, uh, this question of how can we find a safe harbor in ourselves in such a way that we could handle threats to our identity is one of these growth questions.
mm, mm. How do you like if you're working with somebody, is there a way that you navigate that territory? I'm imagining you're working with a CEO maybe who feels a lot of resistance to considering like a different point of view. Is there a way that you kind of open up that self-awareness that maybe being receptive to a different point of view isn't a threat, or that safety maybe means something else other than protecting your identity? Actually, I think those are two separate questions that I'd love to explore. Is one is the first thing I said, and two is, what does safety mean to you? Like what does safety actually mean in the context of what we're talking about, other than physical safety?
Okay, pick one. Which one do you want me
Let's
to
go with the
start?
first one, and then we'll go to the second one.
Okay, this first one is this question about how could somebody come
How,
to
like
see.
how do you approach that if you're working with somebody and so they're very protective of their position and their point of view, and you're trying to explore the possibility that maybe being receptive to a different way of looking at something isn't dangerous. Maybe it's like maybe it's okay. Maybe it's just exploring another point of view.
Hmm. So I ask.
You ask.
um, uh, I have a client who has an incredibly strong value, particularly around equity, incredibly
Mm,
strong, justice, equity, incredibly strong. And if that value, I actually have a bunch of clients like this, but the one I'm thinking about, if that value gets um, activated, she will defend her position. Super easygoing, chill executive, warm-hearted, easy to laugh. As soon as you like touch that nerve, she's like teeth bared, right? She's like she'll take you down.
mm,
And so the question then is, do you want to talk about it? Like it's a thing, it's a
mm,
thing. Um, and kind of the way she comes into me is like, yeah, so people have to just like understand this is a red line. They cannot cross it. If they cross it, they're going to get a different version of me and they're not going to like what they say. Well, that's one way to approach that. And the question is generally, how is it working for you?
mm, mm,
Uh, and generally, my clients don't come to me with like, oh, everything's perfect. And that's why I'm hiring you to talk to me. Cause like I'm awesome. And I just want to spend every minute talking about how awesome I am and how perfect everything is. Generally, they're like, something isn't working.
mm,
Um, and actually, that's not working. And so then the question becomes, can we look at that belief or that value? And often when we look at it, it does feel like I will die. I will not be myself. I will not be who I know myself to be if I do not defend this thing, this value that I have. And so, okay, so then we can explore that, right? In what ways does the defending of this value actually make it this is the terrible trick of our story making, meaning making, is almost always when we double down on something, we get exactly the thing we don't want.
mm.
And so if you double down on defending the value of fairness, then you start to create injustice all around you.
Mm.
And as we scan and look at that, because people can't talk to you, they can't tell you what's really on their mind. They're constantly performing something for you and seeing, am I getting it right? It's not really fair to make people perform for your values. There's all kinds of stuff that happens. And as soon as people can see some of that system, then they want to question, oh, what is this? Where did it come from? Could I reshape my definition? Do I want my clients not to be interested in fairness? I love fairness. I love equity. These are
Mm.
awesome things. What I don't want is for us to be trapped by an old definition of a concept that we acquired somewhere along the road that we can't even look at.
Mm.
I want us to be able to dance with these things as opposed to have them be blinders for us. That's what I help my clients do.
This reminds me of our first engagement when you were on stage, you asked for a volunteer, and I think your question was like, what's the one thing that you know you're terrified someone will judge about you or think about you? And I lifted up my hand and not knowing that the whole thing was being broadcast to 10,000 people. I was like, I don't want anyone to think I'm arrogant. But it's such a powerful example of I think it's like every quality has two sides to it. You know, that one thing that of course it's amazing to stand for equity and justice and fairness. And then there's this shadow. And of course, you know, you don't want anyone to think you're arrogant, but you know, when that gets in the way of you know, making decisions or you know, doing something because you want people to think you're a nice person, that's not functional either.
Yeah, and you can so undermine it, and you can come to a place where you're kind of the most arrogant person in the world about your humility. Right?
Right.
We paint
Mm.
ourselves into these
Mm.
little corners. By the way, I still feel grateful to you for volunteering that day, because I was like, if nobody raises their hand right now, the rest of this presentation is a big nothing. And I know I personally would not ever have raised my hand in that room. So for you to have the courage to do something I couldn't do, I'm still grateful.
Oh, thank you. Um, so back to safety. I'm curious, like, what's your like, how do you think about safety? Like, what is safety? What is healthy safety?
I think safety is the sense that we can handle it, right?
Mm.
Whatever happens, we can handle it. We'll be okay.
Mm.
Um, and and bad stuff can happen, but can we handle it? And generally, I think it's the kind of safety I'm talking about is predominantly a psychological question, right? I don't tend to work with people whose lives are in danger from their contexts. I
Mm.
do occasionally, but by and large, I don't. Um, so I'm talking about the idea that you could be fired and you'll be okay. Your partner could leave you and you'll be okay. Your the dream that you've had that you've worked towards for a decade, it might not come true and you'll be okay. You might discover something about yourself that you don't like and you'll be okay. For me, that's safety. And
Mm.
it expands and grows as we grow, right? The number of things that we think we can handle um, change.
Mm. How do you I love that definition of safety because it's not so much about external situations and circumstances. Obviously, we're not talking about physical safety. We're talking about a different kind of psychological safety and a safety of identity. Um, and I feel like, I mean, for me, for sure, that's a work in progress. I mean, I'm continually discovering new layers of subtle context of, where I'm, feeling levels of inadequacy that are just there somewhere in the background of my experience that shape how I show up, and then I'm, continually protecting myself against. And um, how do you train that, like in your work? Like, how is it, like, what's the
You're
magic
doing it.
trick?
You just named the magic trick, right? That's
Hmm.
exactly what you just said. You're noticing it. You're noticing, oh, look, there I am. I don't think
Hmm.
I'd be like, there's a piece of me that thinks I will not be okay if that thing happens. Okay. Oh, okay, there's an edge for me there. I can explore that edge. I can walk up to it very carefully, maybe holding somebody's hand, put my toes on the edge, see whether the world does drop off there. Um, Santiago's put in the chat being okay with death, right? Like even
Hmm.
this idea that um, that my own mortality, I completely agree. One of the most developmental experiences for me, which I don't recommend to the rest of you, was having cancer twice
Hmm.
and really getting in touch with, oh, okay. I remember as I was like facing into my first diagnosis, I kept thinking, I cannot handle it. Like if this biopsy comes back cancer, I can't handle it.
Wow.
If this thing, if this next thing happens, I can't handle it. If these further biopsies show that the cancer is really like big, I can't handle it. And finally, I was like, you will handle it. Like this is, you have to be okay. You have to find in you a way to be okay with whatever the doctor says next, whatever the surgery says next. Like that's the practice. And it's
Hmm.
the practice, whether it's about the doctor and the cancer, or whether it's about your partner saying, look, I don't think this relationship is for me anymore, or whether it's about, you open up your email at 3 a.m. and you've been laid off. All of those things are horrific. They're horrible. And there will be a piece of you that says, I'm not going to be okay. And then we grow.
Hmm. I mean, that reminds me of, last year, I think I shared with you on one of our calls. Went through a real dark night of the soul. Like a lot of things were kind of crushing me at the same time. And I had this very visceral awareness that this situation could crush me, that 10, 20 years from now, I could look back and be like, oh, one of those kind of jaded people. That's when it all like crushed me. And I really told myself, who do I have to be to meet this moment? Who do I have to become to be able to hold all this and navigate it with some level of grace? And that question really made a difference. It really, like, it kind of gave me a choice. Like I can be crushed and that'll be what it is. Or I can use this as an opportunity to become whatever I have to be to just hold space for it. And it was just kind of like a day-to-day thing, like a moment to moment, like, okay, and it actually wasn't that bad. Like I could hold space for it. It was what it was. And yeah, there's something so powerful about that.
This idea that you have just offered, that we can grow capable of handling what the world throws at us, that we can meet it, that we have that in us, that the intentional evolutionary impulse is ours to grow into. I mean, I'm not sure there's anything more life-changing than that.
Hmm. And it just kind of meets you where you're at all the time. It's always there.
All the time, all the
Hmm.
time. And everything that, Thomas Hubel talks about, like that thing that shows up as a difficulty in our lives is actually the seed of our next selves,
Hmm.
right? That's not a difficulty out there.
Hmm.
That's a lack of capacity in here. And I don't mean a lack of capacity like, oh, you should be ashamed of that. Like the world is throwing at us more than anybody could reasonably be expected to handle.
Hmm.
And the good news is we can grow able to handle it.
Hmm. So we're coming to the end of our hour here, but I'm going to throw a curveball at you just because I have
As if you haven't been.
to. Just because I have to. Um, what's your what's your take on where love comes into all of this? Like what is the quality of love in the context of all of this?
So I have long described development as the capacity for handling complexity. Um, but I now believe that development is actually um, the capacity for loving each other
Hmm.
more than anything else. I believe that uh, our desire for love is one of our strongest developmental impulses. It's also, by the way, one of the things that most gets in the way of our development in the great paradoxical world that we live
Hmm.
in. And our capacity to love and be loved grows as we grow. And so it is both the figure and the ground of our development at the same time. Our ability to um, enclose within us the wished for well-being of an ever greater circle of other beings.
Hmm.
Um, I really think that's like I used to say there's no prize to development. I actually think there is a prize to development. I think it looks a lot like love.
Hmm. Wow. Yeah, I feel like there's so much more we could unpack here around the territory of the developmental journey of what identity and self really is in the context of love and all of that. But this might be a good time to kind of wrap up this part of the conversation because I'm also really we've covered a lot of territory here, and I really want to just I'm so grateful to be in conversation with you and to have you share on these extremely complex topics with this incisive understanding that lets you kind of boil it down to like like the simplicity of how you explain it. So amazing. Thank you. So we want to invite the audience into um, some breakout conversations. This is usually when 30% of you drop off, but I really encourage you to stay on for this because this is
Don't
this
drop
is
off.
don't drop
Even
off.
if even if you don't want to have one of these conversations, you can stay in the main room. Like other things could happen. You don't need to leave. And then we can keep talking. So if you're like on your way to the doctor, I saw somebody who was on the way to the doctor, you could just go on mute. Just just like be with us and we'll be together some more.
I love that. Jennifer is always so good at framing these things so nicely. Yeah, so we're going to invite you into breakouts for 9 minutes, and the invitation is just to share what's alive for you in this conversation. What's emerging? Any questions or reflections or insights that you have about anything that we've talked about, and then we'll come back and we'll open up the conversation for anyone who wants to share and Q&A with Jennifer and just go a little deeper here. Okie dokie. Let's do it. All right. Welcome back, everybody. Hopefully, those were enjoyable and fruitful exchanges with fellow participants. We'd love to open up this space now for your questions and reflections. If anyone would like to share, please click on the React button and raise your hand like this. Um, Yeah, I'm gonna hand it over to the audience. Would anyone like to share questions, reflections, any insights, anything that's come up for you in your own small group discussions? Maria, go for it.
Well, thank you both for letting us be witness to that conversation, and also to the two people I was talking to, where we were saying that identity seems to be a big issue to work around, because we get so fixated with our historical identity and we don't recognize in the moment, within a different context, that there may appear a different internal disposition to relate to this different context. And I was saying that because I had to go, I still am in that process because of migration. Right? And it put me to the question of who the hell am I? And I'm still figuring that out, but it's as heavy as it is liberating, right? And one thing that not too long ago sparked, and I was sleeping and the word came to me, and I woke up and I just sat down on my bed. It's like, and it came to me, it was eros. Of course, I am a Jungian analyst, so immediately I went back to eros and the origins of eros and the whole deal. And there's this image of the cosmological eros, which is the energy that brings together things, and these things acquire form. I cried the whole day when I read that, which I had read a long time ago, but it didn't make the meaning that it makes for me now. But since I read that, oh, I feel lighter, and it's all about how I can do that with myself first. How can I be erotic, if I may use that word, with other aspects, instead of being afraid of now you have to bring this out because the other way didn't work, right? So it's been quite a journey and it's wonderful. So when you are talking about love, I think not this love that, oh, I love you so much, which you eventually will, right? But it's a deeper thing. It's opening up really to the possibility of another kind of connection. So thank you so very much. This has been lovely for me.
Thank you so much, Maria. That's very beautiful. My friend and mentor, Bill Torbert, another glorious developmentalist, and one of his students and then collaborators, dear friends, Hilary Bradbury, have written a book called Eros Power, which you might really enjoy. And it looks at the spark that's between us, the creative spark that's between us, and the creative spark that's inside us, exactly as you talk about it, how we and this was this stumbling between us and finding new avenues of growth inside us, as a really fertile ground. Thank you.
Repeat the title again, please.
It's called Eros Power by Hilary Bradbury and William Torbert. It's a very brave book.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you, Maria, for the beautiful reflection. Svetlana, would you like to share?
Thank you, Lawrence and Jennifer. And I also would like to share two amazing ladies with whom I, on some mystic coincidence happened to be in the same room. I'm Ukrainian, but for a long, long time I live in Spain, way before the war got started. So for me, today's topic about safety and this distinguishing the internal safety when you are in a physically safe world, and the one where it is the lives threatened by some external factors is very interesting duality. And even more, and thank you to my two colleagues with whom we were in the breakout room, I was reflecting on the fact, the coincidence, which apparently probably is not a coincidence, that exactly when the war got started, the same very day, it was the last day of my seemingly before safe world when I stopped being employee working 9 to 5. Coincidence, because I have given the notice half a year before that. And the last 3 years, exactly the time when the war goes on, I'm working as an independent consultant. And this question of what safety means for me, psychological safety. Is it still being a director, with hundreds of people you're managing, and when you are your identity, what we were talking today about, equals to your position, or is it something deeper, which is inside of me? And obviously, the past is long, but the answer is completely different from the identity, which is like your title or the position you have in the physical world. So this talk today is quite, how to say, enlightening for me, because it gives a bit different depths of understanding and self-verification, as again we were talking about in our breakout room. And this internal self-validation and self-verification is matters much more than the external one, obviously. At least kind of this is how it resonates for me today. And thank you, Jennifer and Lawrence, for this awesome play of questions and answers. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Svetlana.
This idea of identity as your business title, right, really does create an unsafe context, as you point out, because that thing can be taken away from you very quickly, easily by somebody else. And so I can imagine the last few years have been a lot for you, and in all kinds of developmental ways. Thank you for being here today.
Yeah. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Svetlana. And Adrian, would you like to share?
So I was together with somebody who had a bit of an emergency, so I was left on my own. So I came back to the main room, and just wanted to ask Jennifer at that time what she said at the end, because I think I misheard what she said, because I wasn't sure whether she said love is the prize of development or the price of development, the C or a Z. And as I reflected on that, as I talked it through, or maybe it's both in some ways, and it kind of very much tied in with my own Christian thoughts of agape love and that unconditional and giving sacrificial love, being maybe something I feel called to. And a key factor for me is whether my clients feel loved at the end of my relationship with them and during. And there's something that comes back to you as well, though. There is a prize that comes back, not every time. But so often there is a reward that comes from that sacrifice to love another. So it just got me thinking. A mishearing, it just got me thinking in different directions, which is one of those lovely kind of mistakes or accidents, if you like. I just wanted to share that with others.
It was a perfect. What you heard was absolutely perfect for that reflection. Beautiful. Thank you, Adrian. Dasha, would you like to share?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I'm a big fan of Jennifer's work. Thank you so much for today's conversation. Everything you shared resonates so much with me. I'm a coach as well, and I have a background in photography. So at some point, I started experimenting with taking pictures of people in my sessions to objectify their beliefs and their state of development. And it's very interesting because just like you said, it's very interesting to see the reaction of people actually seeing themselves in a particular state when they're entangled in their complexity and how simpler things become once you turn them into an object. What I'm curious about is mainly the language. How do you work around the space of no identity? For instance, Eckhart Tolle separates shape and form identity from the essence identity. And that was helpful for me to even understand myself. Oh, there is that shape and form, the identity and material reality that I have, but then there is essential self. And that's that makes it easy for me to at least to understand, okay, there is some essence that is non-material that I can find safety in the times when my form identity collapses. So I'm curious just your view on that, or maybe language or some tools that you use in your work to help people find the ground in that invisible, essential place. Thank you.
We could have such a long conversation, Dasha. It would be so fun. There are so many things in what you say that I'd like to play with.
Let's do it.
Another
Let's
simple
do a part
question.
2. I'm happy to.
I love that you've brought your photography into your coaching and that you are making a real like subject object shift for people, right? And just helping them see. That is such a powerful addition. And I love the way you were able to bring these two identities and weave them together in a way that expands both of them. It reminds me of the work of John Oliver, not the very famous John Oliver, but a much less famous, but still very, very beautiful John Oliver, who has a website that's called, I shouldn't have brought it up if I was going to tell you, not the John Oliver you've heard of, this other one whose website you don't know of. But in a minute, it's going to come to me. But he also makes, he uses video to film people as they are exploring something so that they can then see themselves explore that thing. And it's just a magical experience to see yourself making meaning. That's really what he captures, and it sounds like that's what you capture, Dasha. This other question is about language, but I think the question I heard kind of under your question is about the kind of essential self. Is that like are you wondering about my opinion about the essential self, or is that like the language I use? What's
or
the
even
question
if you ever leap onto the other side of the unseen world, let's call it this way, because I sense there's like an opening for conversation on spirituality as well, which not all of the leadership circles are open to, let's say, if we work with the executives. So, but in my personal opinion, the conversation on development is kind of, it happens simultaneously with spirituality or the access to some sort of spiritual development as we shed identities. So I wonder if you ever make that leap, or how you make it, or connect people to their spiritual self, perhaps.
I think it was Joyner and Josephs who wrote a book called Leadership Agility. Really great book. I almost didn't write Changing on the Job because Joyner and Josephs wrote Leadership Agility. And I was like, never mind. But I was already too far along with Changing on the Job. So I thought, what the hell, just finish it. Right. But the thing that they found is that in their farthest, the farthest reachers that they studied, I think it was like 90% of the people they studied had a spiritual practice of some kind. So I think that the thing that you're pointing to is multifaceted, of course, but one of the pieces is, I think that as we grow, our capacity to envision spirit alters as well, right? And the love that we have for something that's beyond us changes. I think you can have a relationship with, a God or a spirit. Here, I'm going to have a relationship with my dog.
There we go.
How about you sit over there? What do you say? A relationship with a God or a spirit, our capacity for that relationship also alters as we grow. And probably our capacity to be fed by that relationship also alters as we grow. But this is that space of sort of the more unitive field or experience of the world state, the way that we are all connected, and with some kind of force, spirit around us. So I think that is a piece of the developmental exploration.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate the kind of mystical dimension being woven in here, because there's something really interesting. I'm going to speak like 1 minute on this because it's just coming up. But we've spent some time exploring the subject-object relationship, and ultimately, in the very definition of the mystical is something that you can't actually objectify. It's beyond concept, and so it's a very interesting territory. How do I be in relationship with something that ultimately, as soon as I try to put it into an object, it becomes something other than what it is in essence, and I think that kind of puts the mind into a very receptive place if you're really paying attention. What it means to be in relationship with the kind of like the ultimate subjective nature of your life experience, and what it means to really be in touch with mystery, as in mystery is in something you can't, by definition, cannot be objectified. It's not a mystery anymore, right? So you're always in this like very interesting territory with that. Yeah, thank you, Dasha, for bringing that dimension. And Karen, yes, I see your hand. Please do share.
I didn't know how to, I don't know how to activate the things.
That works. That's pretty good.
I love the actual hand, like you have an actual hand.
I don't know if they see that.
You did super well with the actual hand.
Why, thank you. So Jennifer and Lorenz, I'm completely new to both of you. My friend Miriam, who's somewhere in this room, just sent me a link this morning. But listening to Dasha and then reflecting on our little group brought to mind something that I'm curious to hear your responses, and probably also anyone in the room's responses, because we're all learning, right? I hope, and contributing. So I find when our group came together, one of the first things we all asked or shared with each other is what we do, our position in the world and what brought us here. And listening to Dasha, I just started thinking, what if we stopped doing that? Like, what if we actually introduce ourselves separate from the job title or this exciting thing we do, or what tier in the external world we fill, and actually start redefining how we share and how we introduce ourselves, because we're always introducing ourselves. And I think we're always reinforcing, oh yes, I'm that, or I'm these other titles that I hold. And in fact, Jennifer, just listening to you, so much of who I am anyway, and it's taken me a lifetime to start to recognize it, is separate from all of that is something so much deeper. And Lorenz, what you were saying, it's also very hard to define, but I wonder, can we, and I'm wondering your thoughts on this, like, can we make a shift in how, just from the very beginning? I mean, I'll share a quick little story. When my daughter was going to, preschool, lived in Manhattan, and we used to walk to preschool on Lexington Avenue, very busy, in 79th Street, and we'd walk past the 86th Street train station, and every morning we'd walk, no one looked at us. Everyone was in a rush and serious faces and getting to the train. And so one day I said to her, so what happens if we just smile? Like, look everyone right in the eye and smile. Do you think they'll smile back? Like, will we make a connection? And it was beautiful, because every single person we looked at connected. It had nothing to do with who we are, what title we hold, or what brilliant thing we've created or done. And it was just a human to human moment. And I wonder how we can foster more of those. So when we see a person, we don't say, oh, you're a Republican, you're a Democrat, you're a Trump, you're not, you're American, you're European. I mean, it's just all of these titles are just sickening, to be honest. So I'd love to hear.
Lorenz, you came off mute first.
I've been off mute this whole time. I think this one's yours. I think this one's yours. This simple question is for you, Jennifer.
Aaron, I love your question. I love it. I had a practice. I had a practice for a while of not saying what I did and not asking people what they did. And for like a couple of years, when I would meet somebody, I wouldn't say anything about work, and I wouldn't ask them anything about work. And it is hard. That was really hard for me. Just because then you have to figure out, what do you talk about, right? Once you take that off the table, what do you talk about? You have like all these kind of like, and the weather, like work and the weather and these things that are like the small talk constellations. And the conversations I had were fantastic. And I loved not knowing what people did. I loved it so much. And I would know people now for years and still not know what they did. And then someday I would find out and I'd be like, oh, wow. And I'd realize, like, I hadn't thought about that at all. So every time you make one of your identities a thing you're reinforcing and reinforcing and reinforcing, and that you need everybody to know about, you are making a smaller box for you to live in. And every time you can see it and say, oh, like, that's a bar to my cage, could I take it down? I think we create more possibilities. Now we have to then figure out, like, at a party filled with strangers, what's your first question? I live in France now, and this whole lowdown from my French teacher about all the things you're not supposed to say at a party with strangers in France. The list is very long. Like, do you have children is not on the list, and where do you live is not on the list. There's a lot of things not on the list, says my French teacher. Cheese and wine, Deb, right there, that's everything. Cheese and wine, you can talk so much about cheese and wine, also bread. And oddly, in France, politics, totally okay to talk about. In the US, different set of yes and no's. But figuring out what those are and figuring out where we unbind ourselves, I think, is a beautiful practice. Gorgeous. And world-changing.
Thanks, Jennifer. And I do feel like you just used the magical word there, which is just practice. Like, for me, so much of my social relational intelligence actually revolves around very actively prototyping in the way that I communicate with people, just trying something different to see what happens, different than I might normally if I didn't think about it, and being like, well, let's see if I respond in this way, how the person will respond. And I just find that such a great way also to explore the boundaries of your identity and your personalities, to just very intentionally, like, experiment with them, and which comes up in conversation a lot, right? So Allison, I'm going to call you in a second. I see a question in the chat from Richard Fredrickson here. He says, Jennifer, curious about your thoughts about balancing open, honest, curious conversations and getting to action and achieving results in the corporate context. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think about that a lot. I don't find them so different, actually. And the leaders I work with tend to believe that their internal context or capacity shapes what they're able to do, the decisions they can make, the world they can see, the choices that are available to them. And so I have like incredibly businessy business leaders who are super happy to talk about their meaning making, because they know that if they expand their meaning making, they expand the way their teams work together, and they expand the way their company can work. I had one leader tell me, the more I realize how much my ego drives me and how much my like egoic needs limit me, the less my ego drives me and the less my egoic needs limit me, which is kind of the quest, right? Is to explore that space.
Mm.
Richard, I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, then I jump in. Yeah, it's partly, but I'm also thinking about if you have a team, let's say a management team, how do you balance important discussions and conversations and then getting the group together and going for action?
Yeah. And my belief is that the things we want to work on when I'm around, the things we want to work on is our relationship to ourselves, like each of us, our own relationship to me, and then our relationship to one another. And my experience with the teams that I've worked with is that as I get clearer about my relationship to myself, and I get a kind of more wholesome connection to my colleagues, then the businessy bits that we're getting in our way get in our way less. New avenues open up, because what often looks like a kind of business decision is very often a battle of like two people who want to be safe or want to be admired or want to be loved or whatever that might be, whatever those needs are driving them. And as they are more in touch with those needs, they can look at a bigger world. They can look beyond their own remit to the enterprise. They can look beyond even the enterprise to the communities or to the ecosystem in which that enterprise lives. And so my experience, I don't know what your experience is, but my experience is as they become more spacious internally and more connected in their relationships, their organizations actually do flourish.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Richard. Allison, would you like to share?
Sure. Thank you so much for the conversation today, everyone. I'm thinking about patience right now and the questions that were just being asked of you, Jennifer, and how, first of all, when there's a mismatch and usually there is some sort of mismatch in meaning making, but for people to develop, it takes time. And along with the question that was just being asked, like the push to take action, the push for productivity, makes it very difficult for people, I think, to have the patience. And it's one thing when you're with a coach or when there's a facilitator holding that, but I'm just wondering, first of all, how you help people to understand that this matters when you're not in a room full of people who are to some degree invested in this. And secondly, how do you hold them in the patients to do the kind of developmental work that you're describing, where like, you have a team and you need this person to like be able to move beyond their concern of what people think of them. But that takes like, time for them to get there. That's developmental work. It doesn't happen like overnight necessarily. So I'm just curious about how you hold people in the patience that it takes and help them to understand that it actually makes a difference, that the businessy things do get easier when people have a different relationship to themselves and others.
So I love your question. And I will say that is a work in progress, right? Like to have these conversations. And there's some people who are not up for it in this moment. The couple of things I'll say, I've started to talk a lot more, research a lot more, try to understand more the nervous system, and to really understand that urge to action that comes from a nervous system that's triggered in some way. And so that's the first thing I'll say. So I spend a lot of time talking about that and having leaders begin to notice, when is that urge to action simply like the result of chemicals coursing through their veins? And when is that urge to action a choice that now would be a reasonable time to make an action? It's a subject-object move, but it's like a physical question. And leaders, in my experience, really understand that there are moments when they have rushed to action that they wished they could undo, right? Everybody has that experience of rushing to action and then wishing that they had paused just a minute before doing that thing and doing something else. And so people understand that rush to action is not always productive. And the more senior leaders, maybe, I don't know, I work with very senior leaders, they seem to have lots of understanding of this phenomenon. Maybe they get like triggered into action a lot. So that's one thing. The talking about it is a physiological question, and then asking, would you like to change some of the ways your physiology shows up in these moments? It's a long road, but instead of like figuring out how to have your face be in a meeting so you don't look so angry, would you like to invest instead in actually changing your way of relating to people so that you would less often be angry? And many people are up for that. Many people, not everybody, many people are up for it. And I have to say, Allison, more and more, as the world gets more and more triggering, and like so many people are triggered all the time, and being triggered all the time is so uncomfortable. And so more and more of the leaders I work with come to me and they're really uncomfortable. And they've tried everything fast. And they're really willing to say, okay, maybe I don't have the fitness I need for this thing. It's like suddenly all of us are racing in marathons, and we did not train for this, and we can't stop. And so how do we develop this fitness? Turns out to be a question. The leaders I work with are like, yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready for that, because it looks like a longer term solution to the problem that I have.
Thanks for the question, Allison. Let's do one last question from Gerhard, and then we want to take a few moments to talk about this amazing course that we're launching with Jennifer. Go ahead, Gerhard, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Lawrence, for this nice thoughts. And so I would like to raise a question from the beginning of your thoughts, where you talked about having different perspectives, people having different perspectives, different ways of meaning making, and so on, being aware of that other people are just different. They are living in a different world than I do. So, on the one side, this is, I think, a very nice concept. On the other side, I feel, yeah, but I don't want to accept every perspective. So if I have my values and I want to stick to my values, uh, I can draw myself back in my bubble and can say, well, that's just for me and not for the other. But I sometimes also want other people to behave differently. So in the world and so on. So uh, where is where is the balance? I don't know if that the balance the right thing is. Where is my development into accepting or sticking to my values, to my perspective, and honoring my values, my perspectives, and all this at the same time accepting, honoring your values. But does it make sense what I'm saying?
It makes so much sense what you're saying. And I do think that this is one of the challenges of developmental exploration is like, what do I do with the me that I am now and the lines I don't want to cross in that me? How permeable do I want that thing to be anyway? And I think that that's just putting that on on the table and exploring it, I think is super helpful. So if you figure out what are the values or the behaviors you see in other people that you are like unwilling to accept, and then you try to explore that. Sure, murder, for example, unwilling to accept that. Um, Somebody who's rude at a restaurant, to be fair, I really dislike that. It's not murder, but I really dislike it when people are like rude to wait staff. So what is that about me then becomes the exploration I can kind of visit. What is that about me? What might be going on for the other person? How can I understand those pieces? So I mostly don't start with like murder, war. I mostly start with like, oh, I really hate it when people treat flight attendants that way. Like I hate that. And that's where I find those spaces are more fertile explorations for me in my own development.
Yeah, and sometimes understanding their point of view or just thinking about, well, they will have their uh, reasons why they are behaving like that. I can understand, I can imagine that this is something which makes them angry, for example, towards a flight attendant, and still I don't accept it.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's legit. I mean, I think we can, uh, whatever our developmental space is, we can have opinions, right? And we can have the lines that we have. I think that this is completely legitimate. I think the question is, where are those lines? Are we drawing them on purpose, or are they being drawn by something we can't see inside us? Are we making choices about them? Basically, the question is, are you making a choice about it? That's my question.
Yeah. So I'm aware that I'm drawing the line,
Yeah.
that this is not a line which is right or wrong, but I draw the line here. So.
Yeah. And those lines over time change as our experience changes. Not 100% of them, some of them change.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gerhard. All right, Jennifer, amazing. Thank you so much. I want to take a few moments to talk about our little, boy, my voice is going south. Good timing, though, at the end of our conversation. Talk about our little collaboration here. I'm going to just share my screen here for a moment. So we've created this course called Complexity Fitness, which consists of some really amazing videos that Jennifer has recorded are really very much centered around the territory that we cover today. I'm going to let Jennifer share a little bit about the videos in a moment, but one of the things I want to emphasize here is that this course is quite different from a normal, self-paced experience in this conversational format here. So in order to move through the course, you have to respond to prompts. And we really invite you to step into that, because I think the heart of a lot of the territory that we're exploring here is that, it's not like super conceptual. It really revolves around like your discovery, like what you discover about your world and your meaning making and how you relate to other people. Like that's the heart of it. And I just find that the entry point into that discovery is the sharing of other people, right? It's when you hear someone else's story, their lived experience, that it's like an aha or an oh shit moment for yourself. And so this course is really designed around that, in that you have some really amazing, insightful sharing from Jennifer. And then there's a reflective prompt that invites you to share. And then there's an opportunity to really see a summary of what's been shared, see the highlights of what's been shared, engage in deeper conversation, reflect on people's sharing, and have these little micro conversations. And so it's not a ton of content. It's something you can go through probably in a couple of hours if you're engaging. The actual amount of video recording, I think, is like less than 30 minutes total. So there's I think it's 5 videos. Yeah, Jennifer, do you want to say a few words just about the territory of the videos themselves?
Not while that still picture is up on my screen. Thank you. Oh,
I told Natasha we had to pick better thumbnails for those. So we want to go revisit those, because I get you.
I am told that I create terrible thumbnails. Just so you know, it's not Natasha. It really is this face. But
it's good to be in relationship with these identities, the thumbnail identities.
But I think the reason we put this course together is because we thought there were these ideas that, if we put them in the world, might actually do some good, might make your lives better, might help you connect across difference in a new way, might help you explore yourself and explore other people in a new way. And so I love that the way you're doing it at Sutra is with this conversational, asynchronous, but really connected conversational approach, so that it is kind of gets the best of both worlds, both the I get to do it on my own time, but also I kind of feel like I'm at the movies with friends, and I get to have the conversation with them about what matters to them and what they're seeing, and that I think makes the content so much deeper.
And any words about just the actual content itself? Like, I mean, I love that you shared, even though it's not that much content, you put a lot of thought into actually like how to make it the right the right amount of content.
I did work really hard on those little videos. Not on the thumbnails, obviously, but on the content of the videos. Yeah, the thing that I was trying to do is help everyone who engages in this really think about, what is my fitness for complexity, and how do I get more fit? Like, what is it today? And it might be different today and tomorrow and the next day, depending on what you're facing into in those moments. But what is it? And then how could if I feel like the world really is complex enough so that it's a little bit overwhelming, or maybe even a lot overwhelming, what could I do about it? Our normal, like, I would say that the thing that our body automatically has us do is like circle the wagons, right? Like defend and protect the space where we are, because it's hard won to get to where we are. And so what this course tries to do is open the circle, so we can imagine traveling to a new place, becoming more capable of handling what today brings, and then seeing what the prize with the Z is for us as we go on this developmental journey with ourselves. So we explore that, this idea of complexity fitness. What are the reps? What does it look like as we grow, so that we can ask ourselves questions like, where am I today and where would I like to be tomorrow?
Yeah, and the videos are really great. The course is awesome, and I like to think we put together some pretty good prompts and kind of a supportive journey around the whole thing. So, and it's really, you know, the heart of it is really the conversation. So I'm super excited. We're just launching this today, and so I'm super excited to invite everyone here to check it out. This is also like a big prototype for us with Sutra. These conversational courses is something we're putting a lot of energy into because we just feel like they open up a whole new possibility for learning together with other people while not actually being together at the same time. So we welcome feedback, reflections, and thoughts, and yeah, pretty excited about it. Jennifer, I think as we wrap up, do you want to mention just a couple of words about the second release of your book? I know that did that already happen, or is it happening? Or
It happened. It happened. It's in my hot little hands. My first book, Changing on the Job, is out again. But I think it's better. I hope it's better because I spent a long time trying to make it better. And this book is meant to be your companion if you are feeling like you would like to go deeper on some of the things we talked about today. And explore who am I today? Who could I be? And how could I be with you in a different way? It's kind of the whole jam. Whether you're a coach or a leader or a mom or a dad or a human, a partner, I wrote it for you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Well, I have to confess that I really, really love having conversations with you. I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope everyone here has enjoyed it as much as I have. And I just really appreciate your humor, your wit, the way you explain things, and just how human you are. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been such a joy spending time with you and building this course together. And let's put it out in the world and see whether it makes the world better. I think that's our thing, right? Like, how can each of us be making the world a little bit better? And this is Natasha and Lawrence and this is our effort. Let's see how we did.
Thank you so much. And there's so much gratitude for you, Jennifer, in the chat. I don't know if you're seeing it, but there's a lot of love and hearts and gratitude for this incredible conversation. And thank you, all of you, for joining us. We're going to share the recording. Please feel free to share the course with your colleagues, friends. The more people I think that are in this conversation with us, the richer it is for all of us. So please share it. And again, thank you all so much for being here. Maybe just as a checkout, you can share one word in the chat of what's present for you as you're leaving this space. It's always nice for us to see that. And then just feel free to unmute and say goodbye into the space in whatever language of choice, or whatever language you speak. Great. So there's touched, connected energy, very inspired, beauty, gratitude, tending, so much love, hope. Grateful heart, invitation, moved. How yummy. Well-needed confirmation and love, relief, connection, hope for change, insight, gratitude, hopeful, flow, wonderful conversation, acceptance, asante sana, connected. Yeah, thank you all so much. And thank you, Jennifer and Lorenz. To be continued.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Bye.
Lots of love, everyone. Oh, the dog is coming in.
Oh, the dog. Yes. Thank you, dog, for your patience.
All right, everyone. Much love. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.